There were nearly 11 million children in poverty a couple years ago, but this year, that number has fallen to almost 6 million. So what caused the number of children in poverty to be cut nearly in half? The child tax credit. The United States is one of the highest rates of child poverty in the world. According to the OECD, it is more comparable to developing nations like Turkey and Mexico than developed nations like Finland and Germany. One of the reasons for this high rate is due to the difference in welfare schemes that the United States chooses to utilize. The American model of welfare is means tested, adjusts for income, and has stringent work requirements. This style of welfare deviates from other countries which utilize a child allowance system, direct income support for low-income families. The reality is that the American model is not as efficient as the child allowance model. It's a shame because child poverty has terrible effects on a child's health, well-being, and future. 1 in 6 children were living in a household where they weren't eating enough because the household could not afford to. This is especially troubling because food insecurity has terrible effects on a child. According to a Cambridge University paper, they found that kids that grew up in food insecure households had poor nutrition and performed worse academically. As the National Academy of Science puts it, income poverty itself causes negative child outcomes. In response to the COVID pandemic, President Biden passed the American Rescue Plan. The American Rescue Plan, among other things, expanded the child tax credit, essentially making it a child allowance system, but only for 1 year. The enhanced credit provides families with up to $3,600 for each child up to 6 and $3,000 for each child 6 to 17. Parents will receive this credit in monthly increments, $300 for each child up to 6 and $250 for each child 6 to 17 between July and December. If the tax liability is lower than the credit, they'll get the difference as a refund. The expansion is expected to cost $110 billion. With the expansion of the child tax credit, child poverty has been cut nearly in half from what it was a couple years ago. This is amazing for millions of families and children across the country that were struggling, but it's also great for the economy. The National Academy of Science, Engineering, and Medicine concluded that addressing child poverty in the way that the child tax credit does could yield the United States $800 to $1.1 trillion in untapped economic benefit. This takes into account loss of adult productivity, increased cost of crime, and healthcare for poor individuals. Research provides more great examples of the positive effects of expanding the child tax credit. In a paper from the National Bureau of Economic Research, food insecurity declined by a quarter. In the same paper, it stated that the expansion of the child tax credit would produce the largest poverty reduction in the US among the alternatives. In 2015, Canada introduced the Child Care Benefit, a program similar to the Child Tax Credit. The CCB pays families $5,400 per year for each child up to age 6 and $6,400 for children aged 6 to 17. This new program combined 3 separate payments into one to reduce complexity. In 2014, 13% of Canadian children were living in poverty. In 2017, just 2 years after the implementation of the program, that number dropped by 30% to 9%. Not only did poverty fall, but incomes increased. Between 2012 and 2018, the average after-tax income of a single mother under age 54 went from $27,000 to $36,000. Research conducted by the National Bureau of Economic Research found that the expansion of the payments had no significant impact on labor supply. It also had other benefits as well, like maternal depression declined by 10% after receiving the payments. So in total, the program has benefited millions of Canadians. Why shouldn't the United States do something similar? Many people hold the belief that increasing welfare would lead a large number of workers to leave the workforce. While this may or may not be true for some welfare programs, but for the child tax credit, this doesn't seem to be the case. The Center on Budget and Policy Priorities found that 99.5% of low or moderate income parents would continue to work. The same study found that 1 in 7 working class parents worked more than 40 hours a week. The expansion of the child tax credit could allow these parents to work a more normal schedule and spend more time with their kids. However, this only seems to be 0.5% of working parents. In a poll done by Brookings Institute that tried to find out what parents would spend the extra money on, they found that the majority of low-income parents would spend the extra money on buying more or better food for their family. In conclusion, the expanded child tax credit is a policy that reduces child poverty, hunger, and supports economic mobility. It is pro-economic growth, pro-family, and pro-life. It has many benefits that we did not even mention. It could encourage birth rates in a country whose working age population has been stagnant for nearly a decade. If we are to have a welfare system, why not pick the most efficient one? So that is why I think you should advocate for the child tax credit. Thank you very much.